Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and I'm joined here by Ramon.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. This is the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast where we talk about tabletop RPGs. Calvin and I like to take a casual approach to the hobby. So, we just like to share the stories of us being behind the DM screen and being a player and all the wonderful people we get to do this hobby with. And just, trying to demystify the whole being a GM, DM. And, if you've never played tabletop RPGs, what are you doing? You should jump in.
Indeed. So this week we have a pretty cool recap to get into, or at least I think it's cool. Additionally, just want to say up front that if you have any other tabletop RPG topics that you want to hear us talk about or cover, or any stories and stuff that you want to share, feel free to either share them below or over on our social medias or over on our website. However, before we get into the recap of this game, which involves some infiltration and some revealing of plot points that have been stewing for years, we have to get to the most important part of the show, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week.
Yes, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week, brought to you by Tim, but broadcast to you by Calvin, I guess, or... Yeah, broadcast? I don't know.
Sure.
Words.
Dictated. Yeah. Tim had been describing essentially a one-shot that he had been running in real life, and he was using one of the Pathfinder modules, Master of the Fallen Fortress, I believe was the name of it. I had also used the same one, but I just cannot remember if that was the correct name. I'm pretty sure that was. But to describe what he was talking about, at one point during the adventure, one of the player characters had died, and the player, as I recall, wasn't super into the character, and they had gone out for a bit after the character died, and then the game was actually making a bit more progress after that. But part of the adventure is that you come across a NPC that you have to rescue within this tower itself. It's sort of like a mini dungeon. And I think it was the other player who had come back and started using that character. I might be misremembering that specific point. But it did lead to a conclusion of just, having a secondary NPC as a backup character around, just in case something happens to a player character, especially early in a session. You don't want someone to be, completely out of it. And that was something that I had planned to do because I just had someone sitting in on that session, the last session that I ran. And I was planning to have them join the game after the next couple of sessions, just for story reasons. Mm-hmm. But just in case they had time, I had a stat block for an NPC that they could use. I hadn't set up a new player character for them or anything like that yet.
Yeah.
But there was an NPC stat block that they could have used, just in case.
Yeah, and I've used this before in my Path of Inyan game, Pathfinders of Inyan, and because the players are senior guild leaders, they have a bunch of underlings essentially.
Yeah.
And obviously the idea of having a bunch of underlings is that if one of your characters die or decides that they're done with this life, then maybe a player who's a little bit more attached to some of the NPCs that they get to interact with, on a more personal level, I guess, or closer with, they might choose to be okay, you get to just inherit all of my stuff, and then now they get to play this character, right? Because I'm sure that if for instance Calvin's character Macy has another retainer character called Suki, I'm pretty sure you would love to play Suki if you could, right?
You are not wrong.
Exactly, right. So that you could always just have if a player isn't too into a character and you're not too tied down to having you sole control of an NPC, just let them use it. Just feel okay, now you've been promoted to the main character.
Yeah. Additionally, if you're playing a combat that has a lot of moving pieces and a lot of characters in it, if you have an NPC that's on the player's side, you can additionally at that point just let them take control of that character for the length of the combat, especially if it's someone who has a good sense of what this character would do, or at the very least this character would just be useful in combat, so that's what they will do.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be something they know all of their stats, but basically take away the like the actual like, oh, where do I want to go, or where do you want to position this thing, what attack I want to use, all that stuff. Just hand it over to the players and let them, use that resource where they need to. And actually specifically, I've actually become like, sorry, one of my characters that it's a Lancer campaign I played in Wallflower Part 1, where my character died and I had 2 underlings, and then my GM let me choose to basically just continue the story, but as like one of my
like your hires,
recruits,
people who are working for you.
My recruits, who were just like basically like I guess whatever the structure of a military was, but like just underneath us. They didn't have mechs at the time, so now they graduated, and I guess they got basically access to licenses that I owned as the main character, which is pretty cool because I actually changed up my character quite a bit. I went from a like hot-blooded character that wasn't actually Duke to a more chill, more sensible support character, which is pretty. It was pretty different than what I normally play. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just how your characters are. Yeah, and also Tim, if you want to drop more details about that below, that's up to you. I just think that as the information, and as you said, I think it was pretty useful. So that is something that other GMs can use, and just having that backup character around.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Tim. And yeah, there you go, folks. Here's your Woman Dice Weekly GM tip of the week. Have a spare NPC in case a player dies. Just pop them out and be like, now you're the main character, kid.
Yeah. Or even just let them take control of an NPC that's already around.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into this game. So, pretty big twist that had happened at the end of the last session, or the one previous to this. The characters of Delorfek, the dwarf fighter, and Solo, the human bard, have been guiding this little gnome cleric named Brima from one end of the map to the other, pretty much, under the assumption that the person they would be delivering Brima to, a champion of Serenray by the name of Fandrovo, is going to essentially take care of Brima after the priest who was raising her was killed by some undead, as per usual in a fantasy game. However, once they finally reached Fandrovo, what ended up happening instead was that as they were taking a rest in an inn and planning to drop Brima off with Fandrovo the next day, Fandrova herself showed up to kidnap and capture Brima instead, moving almost like instantaneously, just sort of disappearing without a trace, right in the blink of an eye. So we started off pretty much right after that had happened. Solo and Delorfek were, of course, panicking, and some people nearby had noticed the noise, so they went back to their inn room to think. At which point they noticed that Brima's ferret was still there, now awake and just panicking because Brima is gone. So up front, I just had them roll a quick perception check, just because they were like looking around to see who else was out there still. And Delorfek happened to crit on that check, and he happened to notice something that I was kind of sure the players wouldn't. It was just like a thing that was also there in case, but he happened to notice that there was someone else who was watching the alley from where he was back in the inn room on the second floor up. He noticed a figure sort of like watching from an alley, I should say, the area on the street where Brima was just taken. Like a guard had shown up, but he didn't see anything because everyone had already left, so he just like shrugged and turned around. Mm-hmm. But Delorfek was able to see this small figure, so he leaps out of the building, shrugs off that little bit of fall damage, and then just gives chase. And Solo follows a little bit after. And then we got into like a really quick chase sequence, just because I had taken a glance at the chase rules, and I think I can maybe go a bit more in depth with them another time, but it was pretty easy to improv with them, because I would have examples of like, here is a possible obstacle, here are some DCs, and here are some skills you can use to get over and around it. And I would basically go through, essentially I would have the characters do something, and then I would have the target they're chasing go through an obstacle in vaguely rounds, like not exactly a combat situation, but just rounds where they would, if they succeeded at the thing, they would get a little bit closer.
Yeah.
And because of some spells, they were already moving faster than their target anyway.
Yeah, where it's just kind of like, you cut back to the if this was a movie, it would be a cut back to like, oh yeah, the I guess the one who's running away, to be like, oh, they slip underneath the fence and then like closes the fence, and then it's like, oh, you cut back to the players and like, okay, what do you do? Right, that kind of deal.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
So like he hopped over a fence, went through some winding alleyways, and then towards the end of it went to like a market district and like knocked over a cart.
Yeah.
But Dolorific was able to just like plow through that cart, smack the guy, and just knock him over, revealing a gnomish like zealot figure, similar to the ones that had ambushed them a few days ago in a different city.
Oh wait, these are bad guys.
Indeed. So Dolorific grabbed the guy and brought him over to Solo, who caught up after getting sort of like lost in the alleys. And this gnome zealot mentioned, or at least in the conversation in the interrogation that happened, he claimed to be a follower of a demon lord by the name of Gorziniath. And this is a name that's only come up like once before in the campaign. Back when Solo had been possessed, or not possessed, but just basically, I guess, haunted by a succubus. Succubus laid its claws into Solo. And this succubus by the name of Zarnilla, she said that, she recognized some sort of power in Brima, something that she wanted. And she also warned Solo that he was being followed by her brother's followers, her brother being Gorziniath.
Interesting. I mean, I think that's called a situationship. What Solo was in, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called.
Is that it? That's a good one. I think I'll use that. Yeah, so Solo was able to cut off this situationship a while ago because he went through like a whole ritual process for it. But yeah, it seems like the followers of Gorziniath are still following this group, and he said this zealot, he was like angry with them at first because they let Brima get taken away, and he said that Brima would have been easier to take from them than she would be from Franjovo.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I mean, I guess that's the big reveal, kind of, because like Fanjover was very vague. He was like, "Nah, man, this little girl's too hot right now. I gotta take it from you."
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, so okay, interesting. I mean, I guess she was right. Like,
well, I mean, Fandrovo's motives will be made clear later on.
Okay, sorry.
To be fair, but no, yeah, she was definitely like at the end of the last session, she was definitely like, this girl has done something to you to charm you. She is too dangerous to be like left out in the open. I've got to take her and go. And yeah, and now this guy is saying, it would have been easier to take her from you than it would be from Franjovo, which I don't know, might have been true, but we'll never know.
True.
So yeah, they tried to interrogate this guy. He didn't seem to know exactly what his cult wanted Brima for, since he was only a scout who was sent to like follow the party while they were in this new city.
Right.
And he didn't know what Fandrovo wanted because obviously he was as surprised that this happened as they were.
Right.
So as they're trying to get some information out of this guy, they sort of suggest that, maybe they could be convinced to join their group. Not like, I mean, there was obviously a bit of dishonesty in there, but right now, Fandrovo seemed like the worst of two evils, or even just slightly.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually team up with the bad guys. That was also my thought. I was like, we're the baddies now. Right?
Yeah.
Enemy of my enemy is my friend. Right? Like,
pretty much. Like at this point, I think it was a fair assumption that Fandrovo was, if not as bad, then worse.
That would have been like the awesomest thing, and then it would have been like a double, triple cross, like at the end of it. This big kerfuffle between like the bad guys and like Fandrovo and like the party, and they're all just trying to get Brima.
That could still happen. The zealot that they were talking to, he did agree to try to set up a meeting. he wasn't able to get like a full agreement that like because he obviously wanted them to hand over Brima if possible. He wasn't
Right.
able to get an agreement to that, but he was able to say that he'll set up a meeting and we'll see what'll happen. And that might come up later. So yeah, at this point they let the guy go. They returned to their room. The ferret was back asleep, and then there was some discussion over like what can they do next from here. And one of the things they recalled, and this was something that they had talked about like outside of the game as well.
Right.
One of the things they recalled is obviously this letter that Brima has been carrying around that was revealed like several years ago as far as in real world time. This thing that I had written even back when you were playing on Roll20. And it was a letter that the priest Harkham, who was looking after Brima, that he had wrote to Fandrovo. And he had given it to Brima with the instruction of only letting Fandrovo see it. And the session prior, she had like finally handed that letter over. So they were thinking about that. They wanted to like get a look at it and see what it actually said, because Fandrovo had been reading it for a while when she finally got it. So they were thinking that they would need a thief to steal the letter back, which led to them wanting to seek out Alina Coincatcher, who has been a reoccurring NPC in the game.
Man, Alina has you gotten a lot out of that NPC.
Really? I'm so glad. That is another one of the things I'm so glad about, that Alina has gotten to come back, and she's gone from like this generic bandit trying to rob the party to like they're actively looking for her because they need her help.
Yeah, it's some sort of frenemy. Like,
Yeah.
that's always the best case for villains, is when they survive and they become like pseudo allies to the players, and they're like, "Well, I got a bigger fish to fry than you, so let's make this happen."
Yep. I hope nothing bad happens to her.
Oh no.
I don't have any control over that. So the next day, after some not very restful sleep, they woke up and they went out to look for Alina. They knew she was in the same city, the city of Silver Hill, because they all arrived in the same caravan pretty much. They just kind of split up when the party went to do their own thing. But they were able to find her. She was on stage with another bard character that they had met earlier. A bard by the name of Osiro, and she was doing performance with that guy. But at the same time, she was running a similar scam to one she had before, where she plays a performance as a distraction while the rest of her bandit gang go out and pickpocket people. But Dolorfek was able to get her attention with some eye contact and just dropping a gold in like this, she had like this little bowl, I guess, that she was collecting coins in as well.
Yeah.
Because, get paid two ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dolorfik got her attention, and then they basically walked off together, and they had a conversation about, like, essentially about what happened. Like as they walked off, Alina mentioned that, and that she tied a little ribbon into Brima's hair the last time she met Brima.
Yeah.
And Alina was saying that like, oh, I've got a couple new ribbons for Brima. Where is she? And then she learns what actually happened. And at first her reaction, like when the party asks her for help, it's like, yeah, I'm not a hero. This isn't the thing that I do. But then they offer her 500 gold.
And then they're like, we will save this lady.
Yep.
You mean Brima, my best friend?
Yeah, that got her attention. So yeah, they agreed to meet later to talk details. So later, Alina has a room in this other tavern. She's there with her gang, and they get into the details of what they need to do. The party describes the letter itself, which had been essentially it had been magically sealed. It required the use of a healing spell to open up. And what they were able to see, because Fandrovo did open it near them, they were able to see a letter to Fandrovo along with other like documents and like a smaller envelope inside of the actual envelope.
Yeah.
So they describe the whole thing. They start to mention something that Brima had seen, because Brima is capable of having like visions of a person's death if she touches them. And she had seen something when Alina was putting the ribbon in her hair. And the party started to bring it up, but Alina was like, "Yeah, I don't want to know more," because she just straight up did not want to know. But she essentially said, like, in this job, you want to be cautious but not nervous. And if she knows there's a vision of her death, then she's going to be nervous.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Hopefully nothing bad happens to her. So, at that point, Alina also mentions that she had some schemes to rob the Jane Manor where Fendrova lives, but she assumed it would be too difficult to do. But now that Fendrova was acting weird and like going out and kidnapping people, Alina is thinking that something's off with Fendrova, so if any time is a good time to rob her, it'll be now. And she brings up the fact that this cathedral of Sarenrae, it also has a number of historical records with regards to important followers of Sarenrae, including the entire Jane family and the original construction of their home. So, while they can go to the cathedral and see if any of Fendrovo's stuff has been left behind, they can also check out the schematics to the Jane Manor for rescuing Brima, but also for getting back for robbing the place.
Yeah, for getting the bag. Yeah.
Yeah. 2 birds and all that. So this is when we get into an infiltration, and this is a rule subsystem that exists in the Pathfinder Game Master's Guide. Essentially, what it is, and I did do some incorrect things with it. I think I'll get into that afterwards. But the basics of it is that you have an objective you're trying to complete, and you have a number of obstacles in your way. And as you come up against each obstacle, it usually just involves a skill check. Mm-hmm. And when you make that check, you can start to make your way through the obstacle. Or if you fail that check, you can instead increase the awareness of the enemy around you. And if the enemy becomes too aware, it'll end the infiltration. It won't necessarily end the encounter. It's just going to turn into a thing where they realize you're there.
Yeah, so now it's either it probably shifts to maybe a combat, or maybe even you could go into a chase.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
Exactly that. So the way it works is that as you go on, you will acquire awareness points for failed checks, and every certain number of awareness points, a complication will happen, and that'll be something that makes stuff a bit more difficult for you. And you also have infiltration points, and I guess I'll get into the details with that later, but you also have infiltration points, and those are what's used to measure your progress through obstacles.
Right. Just the more you get, the better off you're doing, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So prior to an infiltration, you have time to do prep for it. And if you manage to succeed in preparing for it, that'll give you some bonuses you can use later. Essentially, if you fail on a check, but it's related to something you prepared for, you can just get a success instead.
Oh, nice. It's kind of one of those I forget where the Ocean's 11's thing where they already did it, and it's they think it messed up, but actually it was according to plan anyway.
Exactly. It's I kind of wish, I think this might be something I might homebrew into, because the game Blades in the Dark, you can kind of do that on the fly. You make those checks on the fly, and then it becomes part of the ongoing story of the game. With this, you have to do it before. I kind of want to have that improv thing, and maybe I'll find a way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you could also just run a game of Blades, for just one. Yeah, you could just run a game with Blades and just use their stats or whatever, and then go back to just for the infiltration part, and then go back to just playing Pathfinder. Because I mean, Heist is the game in Blades in the Dark, right? Yeah. So they just have more options. They thought about the whole idea clearly more than just Pathfinder stapling on their own rules to their robust combat system.
Maybe. Yeah, that's worth looking into. Just barring the mechanics of it, but keeping character stats. But yeah, so they did do some prep. In particular, Solo has a set of robes that can change their appearance. And they also sent one of Alina's gang members out to like just scout the location. Although he wasn't able to, he didn't roll very well on his check, so he didn't do very good. And then there was debate over like what time of day to do this, because like if they show up at night and get caught, like that might be more suspicious. But there's probably going to be more people around during the day that they have to blend in with. So the idea that they had, and this was something that they also discussed like in between sessions, so I was very happy. I'm really glad when people are like into the game enough to care about it when we're not playing.
Yeah.
But what they had planned was basically just having Solo change his appearance with this robe and go in as like a follower of Sarenrae, and he would go in with Delorfek, trying to convert him by pretending Delorfek was like a follower of Droskar. He was like this evil dwarven god.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like a. Oh, okay. So then, like, Delorfik doesn't have to act any nicer than he already is, and Solo can like handle the most of the lying.
Yeah, like you can lean on those skills. Although Delorfik does have performance, and that really came in handy during this.
Really interesting. I did not know that. Secret skills, man.
He's
hanging out with Solo too long. Yeah, he's hanging out with Solo for too long. Starting to pick up some stuff.
So yeah, they went through their prep. They snuck in, and then essentially the infiltration does work with rounds, but the rounds don't have a set time like combat rounds do. Yeah. Basically, what I was doing was just having two of them do a thing or do an action, whatever they wanted to do, whatever check they needed, as well as Alina, who was present there. Because she had her own things she wanted to do, and they might need someone to pick locks. And at that point, we basically start rolling for checks and stuff. So the first step was basically getting in and sort of like trying to blend in or just trying to be stealthy. So they were working on blending in, and Solo just got like a critical success on that, so it was very easy for him to blend in. Delorfek did get like some odd looks, especially because of how he was acting, so he did fail that check, and Alina got a critical failure on her stealth.
No,
so, somehow
she just tripped. Boom.
Yeah. So this is when they start like getting some of these awareness points, just as suspicion starts to grow around them. So yeah, I guess I can get into what I was doing correctly and incorrectly here. So again, there is a thing called infiltration points, and you get those for trying to get through obstacles and succeeding at those checks. What I was doing incorrectly was that I was continuously counting those points, but they're only supposed to apply to the individual obstacles. So you might have something that requires you to get one infiltration point, one success essentially, to succeed it. Either like you sneak past the guard, it requires 1 point, so just get one success on doing this thing. But then once you count that point, it only counts for that specific obstacle. What I had been doing was like continuously counting them. I had it,
like adding up, right?
Yeah. I had a tracker, and I was having them just like fill it out with the infiltration points that they were requiring. But then I was like, wait, I'm not actually using these for anything. Oh, I'm doing this completely wrong. But I did like the idea of like gaining more and more infiltration points as you also gain more and more awareness points. So I think I might change up things in the future and just have like just have something where you are counting those number of points, and then you can spend them on like something to make a check easier. Another thing that how for prep, how you can do something that'll let you change a failure into a success. Just something where you can acquire those points and then cash them in for something beneficial, I think would be interesting. Like just keeping track of that score and then being able to actually do something with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did have them counting the infiltration points. We didn't actually do anything with them, but in the future I think we will if I do one of these again. So yeah, they get inside the actual cathedral itself, and they find that there's essentially two directions they can go in. There's one side door that leads farther into the building, and then there's another door, but this one is at like the back of the stage of the cathedral itself. so it's in pretty obvious view of everyone there. So that would be a harder one to get through.
Yeah.
So it takes them a few tries to try to get through. Solo is able to... He does use the spell Ghost Sound to create a bit of a distraction, and I use that just to make like the DC a bit easier. It does recommend that you use the... there's like a standard DC for character levels, and then there's a thing that you can use that just quickly like, here's an easy version of that by subtracting 2, and here's a very easy by subtracting 5, and the other way to make it hard or very hard. So I just used that sort of scale to say like, well, you made this a bit easier for yourself, so you reduced the DC, yada yada. Just to simplify the explanation of those mechanics. So yeah, Solo made things a bit easier. Dolorfek, interestingly, was going into like rambles about Droskar, and he was being led away by like another Serenray acolyte, and then Dolorfek just claimed like he needed to use the washroom. So this other guy's leading him away, and then the moment they're actually alone, Dolorfek like knocks him out and takes his robe.
Classic. Oh, can I go? Can you show me the washroom? Yeah, okay. Clunk.
Yeah, classic Hitman.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dolorfek now has that robe, and this was a thing that like, because I really liked it, I also let them take another edge point, which are those points that you spend to turn your failures into successes.
Yeah.
So if at some point in the future Dolorfek needs to do something and it fails, but you can apply the disguise to it, it automatically becomes a success. So yeah, narratively, Alina was able to use deception to get into this other area as well, as they all went through the side door. And they found that there was a library here, as well as like separate rooms for guests and staff, essentially, to stay overnight, in case they're in the middle of doing some research project or just being especially devout. So there is one larger room that is normally used by the High Priest, but because of their investigation, they were able to find that Vendrova had been using it. So they managed to get into the room using some lockpicking by Alina. They get in there, they see that obviously Vendrova has left quickly. They did know from earlier that Vendrova left the city pretty quick, but it was clear that she left a bunch of her stuff behind. So they were able to find the letter in there. So part 1 successful, but they still haven't found the schematics yet. So at this point, there's debate over what to do next. They could either just leave with the letter and that was it. They could stop and help Alina get the schematics to the Jane Manor, or they could split up, have one person get the letter out of there while the other two go search for the schematics. And I don't know, I really like sitting back and watching players debate stuff. It's very fun.
It's always the best part, and then you just get so many ideas. You're just like, I don't know. and then they make a choice, and you're like, yes, that's the choice I knew you were gonna make, because I've got the biggest brain. It's just outsourcing, man. It's so good.
It really is.
It's actually the supremest Win with Dice tip of the week. Just let their players make their own fun. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, let them figure out what the story is.
Yeah, let them figure out the story is. You know, there's only one of you and like 12 of them. Like, come on.
Yeah, you're really the job of the GM is following the players.
Yeah.
The most you need to do is nudge. But yeah, so they were discussing on what to do there. Eventually they decided Solo will take the letter out. He'll drop it off with one of the guys that one of Alina's gang that is like basically keeping watch of the building. Dolorfek will stay with Alina and try to make their way further into the building and then let Solo catch up. So they did also make a disguise for Alina using the leftover robes in Vendrova's room. So they had another point there. And they used that to get themselves back into the main area. So while Solo headed off to drop off the letter, Dolorfek and Alina went into like the back area of the cathedral. And they found like this sort of private chapel area that was sort of reserved for selected members. either the more devout or the more wealthy, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I don't make Saren Ray look too bad. I don't know what impression I'm giving of Saren Ray at this point.
Well, I mean, Saren Ray is like, I mean, she's like the quintessential good dude, right? But she's also like I don't know. I think religion is malleable, and not all organizations need to be the greatest. It's fine.
Fair.
Giving Saren Ray a bad rep. She's an angry fire lady who comes down from wherever she is and burns everything, and then says, "My job is done," and then leaves. Like,
I hope that part is clear.
well, no, actually, I'm pretty sure her like thing is like, which is so strange. Actually, maybe you should read a little bit more of Saren Ray. I think Saren Ray's thing is also forgiveness, which I don't understand. It's like you get one chance, and if not, then like you're just gonna die by holy flames. Like
that is a thing that will probably come up more when they interact with Fendrovo more. Yeah, I have had to consider the question of like, how would Saren Ray feel about everything that's happening right now?
That's true. She's conflicted in her Saren palace.
I mean, yeah, they would have no way of knowing. The only person who would know is the person who is supposed to have a direct connection with her.
It's true. I'm sure they could just be like, "Hey, Saren Ray, is this cool or not? Let me know." And then if they just catch on fire, then they know.
That's one way to find out. So yeah, they get through to this back area, and from there, there's only a couple of doors to try. The first one Dolorfek tries is actually like a resting place for prior key members of the church, but he's able to back out of there, although it does raise suspicion a bit. The other door that he checks is magically sealed, so he gets Alina's help to start getting that door open. And by this point, Solo manages to make his way back into the building. And at this point, they had gotten enough awareness points that another complication was going to happen. They dealt with a minor one previously, but they were able to get through that pretty easily. But at this point, the High Priest himself showed up. And he was sort of asking, like, when is Fandrovo's room going to be cleaned and all this stuff, just because it was still in, like, a state of a mess. But because he was there, he was raising tension a bit. So things got a bit more difficult at that point.
Ooh.
So while Dolorfek managed to get some of the acolytes distracted by sending them off with Thorpe to, like, start dealing with the mess in Fandrovo's room, Alina got the door open, but she was having trouble finding those schematics because her perception is not great, apparently.
And her stealth, like...
it's weird where she fails sometimes.
It's like, why don't we even bring you along?
For a couple of doors, I guess. But yeah, so she was trying to find the schematics, and she managed to do it just by the time Solo got to that area. So they made their way out. Awareness was pretty high at this point. They were cutting it pretty close. Additionally, by this point, again, because they got a few more awareness points, another complication happened in that someone noticed there was an unconscious body in the washrooms and someone had taken their robes.
Oh no!
So tensions are high. But between Dolorfek and Solo managed to create a distraction using Solo's ghost sound spell. And that made things a bit easier for them. It did allow Alina and Solo to get out, but Dolorfek got spotted right at the end. And the way that the awareness points work is that they have a maximum cap to them based on the number of obstacles you have.
Right.
So they were at like 39 of 40 awareness points. 40 being the maximum before the infiltration is over. And unfortunately, Dolorfek just got caught on the way out, just on that one last check. So with regards to the infiltration, I think the structure it gave created like a very interesting story with them sneaking around and putting on disguises, and I like that it gave it mechanics to work with, because that is the exact kind of thing that I would like to have. Because I want to have those mechanics to work with. I want to be able to say, like, okay, here's how difficult it might be to do X, Y, and Z thing. You need to sneak past this guard. You need to blend into this area. You need to get this door open. I like having this subsystem here because it helps create this story of, like, they were just about to get out and they just barely got caught. Like, that sort of thing. Or, like, they use their skills in unique and different ways to sort of blend in and try to get their way to what they need to acquire. But, tensions are rising and other stuff is happening, and it's making them harder to do that. Like, this was the best sort of, like, stealth mission I've had in a tabletop RPG session. And I know those are very hard to do, so I'm glad there's mechanics for it. I'm going to change things up with them a bit, because I have my own stuff that I want to do, but I do like this system so far.
Nice, that's good.
So, yeah, at this point, the infiltration part was over. Dolorfek was spotted, but from behind, so they haven't seen his face yet. So he pushed his way through, managing to get, like, trying to get out of the building. Thorpe, the high priest, gave chase, and he summoned a spiritual weapon in Dolorfek's way, trying to stop him. Solo managed to distract the high priest by using a message spell and trying to sound like Saren Ray. Which, a brave move.
Damn, man.
But Dolorfek was able to, like, parry his way around the summoned spiritual weapon. And he made his way towards, like, the little bit of a crowd that was, because they're still in a big city, so he's making his way out towards a crowd. Alina, whose spells I should have looked at, but that's fine. She did have an invisibility spell that she managed to slap on Dolorfek, and then she stealthed her way out of there. Solo, who the high priest had seen cast a spell, wasn't able to get away in time. So he did get stopped. The priest tried to interrogate him, but wasn't really able to get anything from Solo. And then, as more guards were showing up, Solo managed to sneak his way out of there. Although the high priest does know Solo's face, and he knows there were other people, but he doesn't know who else was there.
Okay. Well, I mean, they tried.
Yeah. They did get both the letter and the schematics, so depending on how the break into Fendrovo's house goes, I mean, like, I do want to try this again, but for one, I'm going to scale down things a bit, and just focus on one objective instead of trying to do two at once. And like I said, I do want to count up all their successes and have them be able to trade those in for something. I just have to figure out what.
Yeah.
So this is where we get to, I guess, the interesting part.
Part that I'm
the very interesting part.
Apparently 2 years I've been waiting for this thing.
Right? So at this point, they get back to the tavern where Alina is staying. They do have the letter. It was already opened because Fendrovo opened it. So what they found in it was a letter that Harkham wrote to Fendrovo. They find a bunch of, like, diagrams and notes that they're not able to figure out just yet. And they find a smaller sealed letter specifically for Brima. And then I guess we could get into what is on this letter. The letter from Harkham to Fendrovo, rather. It describes how Brima's power is getting stronger and how she is, like, essentially describing, like, how she's able to touch someone and see the moment of their death. Something that Fendrovo clearly already knows, but is now aware that those powers are getting stronger. Also mentions how she is developing as a cleric much faster than anyone else her age. And he describes a device, or constructing a device based on a diagram that he created, something made of cold iron. And he seems obviously, like, concerned about Brima, but he says that, I'm trying to summarize this without reading out the whole thing, but, like, one of the things he says is that he hopes Fendrovo will consider the girl's comfort and what is best for her. But if the device that they built fails, and they have to do something terrible, then if they have to do something unthinkable even, that he should be the one to do it. He seems worried about something to do with Brima.
Oh no. Oh no. That's not good.
It is really not good. And then at the end of this letter, there's some more hastily written text, apparently from like the day he was killed, if not very recently before that, where he describes that he was going to get some help to get Brima to Fandrovo. And he describes how to open the secondary letter, in that it needed to be opened with a blade of cold iron. And he says that it is like specifically for Brima. And he expresses sort of this grief over knowing what will be done to Brima.
Oh shit.
So, fortunately, or unfortunately, the party actually did have a dagger of cold iron, one they had picked up like just a session prior.
Interesting. Wait, was this planned or?
Not really.
Damn, man. All right. Well, I'm glad it worked out.
They were looking for like special items and stuff while they were shopping. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, you could probably find something that's like made with unique materials and stuff. And I was like looking at the materials and I was like, there's silver and there's cold iron. Oh, wait. Oh, well, you already bought it, so. I did forget they had it, though. At the time, I was like, oh, that's probably going to come in handy later. And then I completely forgot about it.
True.
Because I think it was Solo that bought it. He bought 2 daggers. One was silver, and he gave it to Brima, and then he kept the cold iron one. And yeah, I didn't remember until this came up. So, the letter to Brima. And this is a thing that, it's gone through a few drafts, but, yeah, I guess I'll get into it. It essentially describes how Harkham found Brima. It discusses an event that took place several years ago with Brima's parents, who were part of a fiendish order in service of a demon lord.
Oh,
and how...
Oh, no.
And how their intent was to summon that demon lord onto the material plane. However, to do so, the demon lord would need a anchor of sorts, a living being on the material plane, and an especially useful anchor would be a baby that has just been born.
Huh.
So he was there with other followers of like different deities, like some followers of Ionde, and I think I mentioned he was there with other followers. No, because he's a follower of Pharasma. He was there with followers of Ionde. They were followers of Sarenrae. That's how he met Fandrovo for the first time. And they were facing this cult that had taken control of a small tower in like this mountainous area. Mm-hmm. So while he and Fandrovo were essentially taking watch outside and dealing with some like straggler like imps and stuff, the rest of the force had gone inside to this tower. And at some point, they were doing battle in there, and it took a while, but the forces inside started doing battle. They could hear it from outside, and then they heard, like, essentially this massive explosion, and they heard roaring and crashing from inside the tower. They could see inside the tower that their allies were battling with the cultists and, like, this massive hulking figure that was on the way to pull itself out of a rift. However, in the middle of that, again, there was like this explosive magical force. Fandrovo managed to pull Harkham to safety as the entire tower basically exploded and collapsed, with most of it falling down into like this valley near the mountain, where this valley like connected to the mountain that they were standing on.
Yeah.
So it took a bit of time for the dust and smoke to clear, but they could see that like the tower was largely gone, the upper levels were completely destroyed, fallen into a ravine. But then they heard the sound of crying from within the rubble. And Harkham and Fandrovo were able to sift through it, and that is where they found small baby Brima. And at this point in the letter, Harkham goes into more detail, saying that something like a demon lord will need a living being to anchor to. essentially, like, without having some sort of anchor, they'll be pulled back into either hell or the abyss or whatever dimension they're coming from. And this is something they've seen before, because when they helped defeat some demons who were attacking a small town, they saw them get, like, pulled back into the dimension that they came from. So the sacrifice of a baby at the exact right moment would be exactly like what a demon lord would need, especially something so powerful. It would need that newly formed vessel, basically. So even though the ritual was interrupted, it still partially worked. So even though this demon lord was defeated and supposedly left formless after his anchor was, separated from him, there was still a little bit of that power within her, which is why she's able to develop her magic so quickly, why she has this strange ability that no one else has. And he goes on to describe that if the power that is within Brima should sort of like take control, or if she should falter in any way, if she becomes the vessel of this demon lord, if there's any of him left, then she would become a fire that burns down the realm. And he says that he had he had tried to keep her safe, tried to give her a normal life, but obviously if she was reading this letter, then that would no longer be possible. So essentially he was apologizing for the plan that he had come up with Fandrovo, who Fandrovo originally just wanted to destroy her and be done with it. But what they had come up with was instead a cage of cold iron to contain Brima in, because that is something that demons are weak to.
Oh, so they're just gonna lock her up in a cage for the rest of her life? Like, jeez. And
that was the worst case scenario.
Oh man, and so I guess the good guys are the bad guys.
I don't know. Maybe. I was very interested in how they would feel about Harkham as a character, because they only got to interact with him for a very short period of time, because he got killed like right away in session 1. But as he's describing, like, he was trying to give Brima a normal life. He didn't want Fandrovo to kill Brima, and even now he was like, he would rather put her in a prison instead of kill her, which, I don't know if that's better.
Yeah, it's like
probably not.
You're the child of prophecy. You're the chosen one, Anakin. Damn, all right.
Pretty much. But he's essentially describing, like, if this demon lord managed to find a way to return through you, it'll destroy everything. So he's putting this as an apology, but he is planning to, create this cage for her.
Yeah, just the backup plan in case Brima goes wild, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it was. I don't know. Ramon, how do you feel about this letter?
It was like kind of worth 2 years. That was like a lot. I was like, I just never expected like Brima to be like the demon child to summon Trigon, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, what the fuck? This is a lot to take in. Yeah. No, that's pretty. No, it's cool. I like the story. I think it's pretty cool, and it gives like a more backstory to Harkin than he got while just being like IRL, like in the game, right? So
yeah. This was
cool. Although I don't know where you're gonna go with it. I'm like, obviously you gotta rescue Brima, but then what, right? Is that the
I have ideas.
The Brima exile story? Now you're on the run, crossing like oh man, that means you're gonna be hunted by like Sarenrae goons and the demon goons if they ever get her back, if like they can't figure out how to like help Brima. And then it's like, how do you break a curse like that, right? Dude, I'm wondering. Yeah. I mean, there must be some cool fucking thing. So yeah, I'm excited for them. I mean, again, I think this was really heavy, so I'm glad Baruth wasn't there. So I'm like, I'm just gonna. I only want to come in when things are fun. It looks like things are not going to be fun for a while.
Yeah, Baruth is off hanging out with Koyel, going through a fighting tournament.
Yeah,
He's
like
having the time of
he's
his life.
yeah, he's having his like shonen fucking like goofy ass moment,
The
right?
tournament arc.
The tournament arc. He doesn't need all this heavy stuff. I think if I do join back in, I'll make another character. Just keep Ruth just, chill in the background in case, this new character gets keylead or something. I also love that now Tim just refers to just killing a character with 2 crit saves, or 2 crit fails, a Keely, even though I guess it's the first one. Oh well, whatever.
Oh man. Yeah, this was additionally they were able to, like, just looking at from the letter and looking back at the notes and documents that Harkham had also put in the envelope, they were able to sort of put together that the demon lord that he was talking about was at some point Gorziniath.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, as you were saying, like, they've got they're gonna have a lot of people on their tail if they do manage to escape.
I mean, I do kind of like it. Like, I think it's pretty cool. I think you got a pretty good campaign going there, Calvin.
I'm very glad, because so originally I didn't have like a whole letter written out. I just had like, this is what's on the thing, and it would just say like, this is what Harkham City was doing and this is the detail of it. But this is this was a lot more interesting. I did manage to get the music player in Foundry going, so I had it just playing like this one particular track of just like this very subtle and quiet and suspicious dark music.
Ooh, ominous shit.
Yeah, ominous. So yeah, I'm glad that it was an actual thing that they read through, and I'm glad they all liked it. There was a whole lot of shock, which is really fun. I'm always like, I would always be nervous about this sort of thing, just revealing some big detail like this to players, but I'm glad that there was a lot of reaction to it.
Oh, you made him wait 2 years, dog. That's a.
Well, I'm glad it was worth it. So yeah, like at that point, I was wondering, like, what are your characters thinking? And Solo was like, he could understand Harkham's point of view, but Delorphic was just angry at both Fandrovo and Harkham for not like trying to find a better solution, or even just telling Brima sooner.
That's true. I mean, I think that's what. If Ruth was there, Ruth would have been like, "Yeah, man." with his two brain cells, he'd be like, "We can figure it another way." Like,
yeah. Yeah, that's entirely fair. And that is one of those things that, like, I wanted, like, that's one of those things that I wondered why I was wondering, like, how they feel about Harkham as a character, because he was like trying his best to. He was trying to do the best for Brima, but whether or not he made the right choice is, I mean, I guess that's up for debate.
Yo, I'm like so excited for them to either fight a demon or like Sarenrae. Like, I want them just to fight Sarenrae. Like, get the stat block. We'll convert it from Pathfinder to Pathfinder 2.
Oh my god.
Just like, she just shows up and is like, you done goofed, kids.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. They still have a confrontation with Fandrovo to go, and I have been bouncing that around in my head because I've got to have, like, she's got some explaining to do.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that's ready. And yeah, there was just some discussion of like they were also wondering what Zarnilla's angle or what her involvement in this is, because Zarnilla clearly recognized something in Brima. What does that mean?
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how Brima's like psychic abilities, like for like her seeing someone's death and like linking to this demon lord. I mean, like, is that just an extension of his power, or like just because the dude's like from the Badlands, right? So he just has that ability. Like, I'm curious to see like if Bruma gets more powers, or I think I just want to reconnect. I want the party to reconnect with Brima most of all. I think that's one. I want to see that happen.
Yeah, me too. I have been honestly, like, after this, I've been like thinking a whole lot about Brima, and I made a very sad character.
Yeah, dude. Like,
largely unintentionally, because I've been thinking so much about like what's gonna happen when the players see this. I didn't think about what'll happen when Brima finds out.
she's just like this demon lady prophesied to end the world, and she's like, "But I just like graduated middle school. Like, what do you mean?" Like,
yeah.
Oh my god.
yeah, pretty much. Like, I don't know why I never considered that. I was like, okay, I have an idea of what'll happen with Fandrovo and stuff, but I didn't think about how is Brima gonna feel when she sees this. At least until last session, and since then it's been like all I can think about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, at this point, because they have the house schematic already, and because it's obviously where the plot's gonna go, I was just saying, like, you can tell from the schematic that you got that, and the notes on like the cage design from Harkham, from his notes, that it's most likely in the Jane Manor. So that's probably where they're gonna go next.
Sick. I mean, I would, if I were you, Calvin, and Tim, don't listen, or Chibi, don't listen to any of this.
Yeah, skip ahead.
I will have all of them, like all parties, just show up at one time in the final room. Like, like I would have like monologues and speeches, and after that, just the bad demon dudes show up because they were tailing you guys. And then it all just kind of blows up, because I love when you go to someone's house and things just get wrecked. Like, it's the best. So just I would just have everybody just like show up and have a big three-way fight, because I think that would be really fun and hard on you, Calvin, but like it would be pretty fun.
I'm thinking about it. I do have like I'm hoping the players just get ahead. I have a map. I want to do another infiltration. I'm going to set up my homebrew rules, and then we'll see how things go. Because again, infiltrations need complications, and I can think of quite a few things that will make their mission a bit more complicated.
Yeah, man, because I feel like it's like pretty much. I mean, this is like the climax of the story happened, but now it's kind of like the falling action. What's happening now? It's like the consequences of like the whole story needs to get resolved, and now it's like you got to get Brima back, and then like out of the season ends once you get Brima out of there. Like,
that's where I'm hoping it ends, because I have another person who I wanted to have join the campaign, and it's going to be very hard to introduce them at this point. And also, I just figure like narratively, it's more interesting if it finishes with Solo and Dolorfe, because they've been around Brima the longest.
Yeah, those good old boys. Like,
but yeah, that is. I'll put a timestamp so the players can know they can come back in. But yes, that is what happened in the session, and now I've got to deal with what's gonna happen next. And again, I'm very excited. I'm really glad like I have like stuff going on in my ongoing campaigns. That's like very exciting for me. But yeah, I've been. I just want to get to it,
Yeah.
And one day soon we will. But that is, yeah, I think that's gonna be it for this recap. Unless Ramon, if there's anything else you want to ask or clarify regarding this session.
No, I'm just excited to see the Resolution. This is the best not TV show I've ever watched.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks a ton, everybody out there, for listening. Really appreciate y'all stopping by. If you want to see more of the podcast, just check out the channel, hit the subscribe button and the bell notifications to get notified when new episodes go up or when the channel goes live, because there are weekly gaming streams on the channel as well, with Sims on Thursdays, Divinity Original Sin co-op on Fridays, and on Sunday, I took a break this Sunday because that was the same day that I ran the game, so I was like, I need a break. Next Sunday, we'll be starting with Dead Space 2. So look forward to the terror of space.
It's not even spooky month. Damn.
Additionally, check out all the links below if you're into Lancer third-party content, as well as all of the other awesome people that we know, including the Untold Stories Project, where I'm at a couple of times a week. Definitely check them out because they're working on some stuff in the background that I think is going to be very fun and interesting, and I'm excited to be a part of it. But that's all I've got for now. Anything else you want to say before we head on out of here?
No, I think we're good to go.
All right. Well, for all of our GMs and players out there with their own secret letters and hidden reveals and plot twists, just remember to keep on winning with dice, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.